What person ruined their entire life by making one mistake? My father, years ago, co-founded a trucking company with his closest friend at the time. The company's main office was located in a neighboring state, about a 6-hour drive or a 40-minute flight away. Oddly enough, my dad never made the trip to visit the business in person. Despite my mother urging him to be more involved, he would always say he trusted his friend completely. Since his role was limited to managing the company's finances, he believed receiving regular reports was enough. Eventually, things fell apart. His friend ended up swindling him out of $1 million, bankrupting both the company and our family before vanishing to a tropical location. It was devastating. This happened in the late 90s, so $1 million had even more value back then. I appreciate the sympathy, but don't feel too bad. My father ignored every red flag. His partner would sell off company jobs to other firms and keep the money. The financial reports he sent were completely fabricated. Employees went unpaid. The company fell deep into debt, and once his partner had pocketed enough, he secretly transferred his company shares to my dad and disappeared. Andrés Escobar, a respected Colombian footballer, tragically made a mistake during the World Cup by scoring an own goal. When he returned home, he was murdered, payback from criminals who lost money on their bets. Life in Colombia then, and even now, can be frighteningly cheap. There was also a major crash near me. Multiple cars and 2 trucks involved. One of the trucks slammed into stopped traffic at around 50 mph. 3 people lost their lives, and the aftermath was so horrific that 2 victims could only be identified through their microchipped dog that was also killed in the crash. It made national news and was later featured in documentaries. The truck driver had been using his phone at the time. He's now in prison. A guy I went to high school with died shortly after graduating college in a drunk driving crash. Initially, I felt terrible until I found out he was the one who had been drinking. He drove the wrong way on a major highway and caused a head-on collision that killed an entire family. One reckless decision destroyed so many lives. All he had to do was call a cab or sleep at a friend's house. A daughter of a family friend was caught up in a disturbing trend from several years ago called coma drinking. As the name suggests, the goal was to drink until passing out. She did, and ended up in a coma. She survived, but with some level of brain damage. Similarly, a girl from my school died from alcohol poisoning under the same circumstances. I once worked for a man who suffered a spinal injury after diving into snow that was denser than he expected. Another guy I knew had too much to drink at a summer neighborhood party. There were signs around the above-ground pool warning against diving, but he ignored them. He hit the bottom, broke his neck, and was left paralyzed. His child was only about 6 or 7 at the time. The man himself couldn't have been older than 40. In college, I knew a guy who recently passed away after diving into a river. The water was cloudy, so he didn't notice the rocks just beneath the surface. The impact destroyed his spine. A well-respected heart surgeon once asked a man to stop smoking near a hospital entrance. The man responded by punching the doctor in the head. That single punch knocked him to the ground, where he hit his head again. He was put on life support for 4 weeks, but there was nothing they could do. He never recovered. Gabriel Rivera, a promising NFL player drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, had a bright future. Halfway through his rookie season, he crashed his car while driving drunk at nearly twice the speed limit. He survived, but was paralyzed for life. I also ran into a former football teammate from middle school at Walmart a couple of years back. He told me what happened after 7th grade. He was once seen as a promising local talent, a big kind guy who played defensive end, stayed away from drugs, avoided trouble, and kept decent grades. Back in the 90s, for some odd reason, pantsing was a trend, pulling down someone's pants as a joke. It happened often during hazing rituals. I was a victim of it a few times myself. It was silly and immature, but back then it was popular and seen as funny. One day, during one of our cross-country runs for football practice, we were jogging around a long trail that looped around the school and extended into some nearby woods. As we passed a couple of girls from the track team who were sharing the path, one of our teammates dared a lineman to pants one of the girls. To my shock, he actually did it. He moved so fast, I didn't even have time to stop him. Unfortunately, the girl was the daughter of a lawyer. As he ran off laughing, she screamed that she had been touched. The police arrived soon after, cuffed him and took him away. I remember being confused at that age, wondering why the police were even involved. It didn't fully register what had happened. I thought she was just overreacting to a prank. He was arrested, charged with sexual assault, and spent the rest of his teenage years in juvenile detention. When I ran into him years later at Walmart, he was collecting shopping carts. I had nearly forgotten about that incident. He shared that, after getting out of juvie, his life was permanently changed. He was on the sex offender registry, couldn't go to college, struggled to find work, and lived in public housing. Walmart was the first place to give him a job, though he admitted he had to lie on his application to get it. He asked me not to tell anyone about his past, saying he had been close to taking his own life before landing that job. Every night, he said, he replays that moment in his head and thinks about ending it all. That really stuck with me. Thousands of kids got pants that school year, but he picked the absolute worst person to prank. After his arrest, pantsing stopped altogether. The next trend was kids punching each other and shouting, "Open chest." I couldn't understand how a conviction from middle school could follow him into adulthood. He explained that charges like indecency with a minor don't get sealed, ever. I had no idea until he told me. Then there was the case of Sam Ballard. In 2010, he ate a small slug on a dare. Unfortunately, it carried a parasite that led to a coma and left him paralyzed. He passed away 8 years later in 2018, surrounded by family and friends at Hornsby Hospital. A friend of mine did something similar, also caught rat lungworm disease, but survived. He was lucky. Most people show mild or no symptoms at all, but in rare cases like Sam's, the brain can be infected. Some drugs seem harmless and come with minimal consequences. Others completely take over your life. I was a straight-A student in high school, just a few weeks away from prom with my first serious girlfriend. Everything was going well, except I couldn't find any weed in the new neighborhood I'd moved into. After a few days of withdrawal, I took a friend's suggestion and bought whatever substance he was selling. I figured it would be a temporary substitute, but from the first hit of that pipe I was gone. My immediate thought was how much money I could get from selling all my belongings. I'm not joking, just one hit, and I was hooked. It took over 12 years to escape that addiction. I lost everything, my job, my diploma, my family, my friends, all my possessions. Looking back, it felt like I had no choice but to be addicted. It's like the drug owned me. Nobody wants to live like that. Crack is one of the most destructive substances out there. I genuinely feel for anyone who's had to deal with it. It strips away the ability to choose. No matter how badly you want to quit, I can relate. Right after high school, my friends and I mostly smoked weed. Occasionally we'd use a little cocaine. One day we stopped by my dealer's place to grab some, and he was snorting OxyContin. I declined, saying I just wanted coke. He gave me that, and then offered a fat line for free. He laughed and told me it was Oxy. Within minutes I told him, "This is going to ruin my life." And it did. I became addicted for more than 10 years and lost a huge part of my life to it. Thankfully, I've been clean for over 8 years. Now, I have a stable job, a supportive family, friends, and a loving partner, but I've seen many others not make it. That same dealer died of an overdose in 2013. Others I knew are either still struggling or have simply vanished. Dennis Rader, the BTK serial killer, bind torture, kill, managed to avoid being caught for 30 years. But eventually he began seeking attention. He started writing letters to the police, taunting them for never having caught him. In one letter, he asked if a floppy disk could be traced. The police told him no. He believed them, sent the disk, and they tracked it. That led to his arrest, and he's now serving a life sentence. What's notable is that the data from the floppy disk was only circumstantial. It wouldn't normally be enough for a warrant or arrest, but once they knew who he was, investigators obtained a warrant to collect DNA from his daughter's pap smear. That sample showed a familial match with DNA found at one of the crime scenes, strongly suggesting that Rader himself was the source. Then there was the terrible accident on the Dolphin oil rig in 1983. A diver accidentally released a clamp during decompression. The sudden pressure change caused an explosion that killed 5 people, 4 divers and 1 assistant. One diver's body was forced through a small diameter opening, causing massive trauma. His remains were found up to 10 meters away on the bridge platform. One more person was seriously injured. A friend of mine was having a beer in a bar when some guys started harassing him. He tried to avoid conflict, moved seats twice, then got up to leave. One of the guys punched him, and he threw a punch back. That single punch put the other guy in the ICU, and doctors thought he wouldn't make it. My friend ended up in jail, waiting to find out if he'd be facing manslaughter or worse. The guy pulled through, and my friend pleaded to a reduced charge, aggravated assault. Still a felony. The real issue wasn't the punch, it was the bad lawyer he got. My brother used to play rugby and had a bright future. He was close to joining the national team, but he fell in love with the wrong person. Her father didn't approve and arranged for her to marry someone else. Despite the fact that she was 2 years older than my brother and both were over 21. Her father accused him of rape and grooming. That lie destroyed his career. She convinced him to run away with her, but days later she met the man she was arranged to marry, who happened to be extremely wealthy. She liked him and never told my brother. He waited for her, hoping, until he eventually contacted her and found out the truth. He broke down completely and fell into hard drug use and criminal activity, from being the top player in his league to becoming a thief in just weeks. I saw her recently after moving to a new town. She approached me with 2 kids, asked about my brother, and said she felt bad about how things turned out, but also mentioned how happy she was with the luxury lifestyle she chose. I slapped her. I only regret it because her children were there. As for my brother, he's still hanging on. Barely. He recently got clean, but he's dealing with severe paranoia and possibly other mental health problems. We're doing our best to support him. Then there's Richard Jewell, the security guard who discovered a pipe bomb at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. He was doing his job and doing it well, but ended up being falsely accused by both the media and law enforcement. His life was turned upside down. What's especially tragic is that he didn't actually do anything wrong. He saved lives, but because of his background being seen as a wannabe cop and someone who wanted to be seen as a hero, he became a target. His biggest mistake wasn't a mistake at all. It was just being who he was before the incident. When he actually did the right thing, they still went after him. Law enforcement took the lazy route, smearing him because he was an easy target. And let's be real, when a case is complicated, they often prefer simple answers over the truth. Fentanyl wrecked my life. Just one time using it sent me into a downward spiral that lasted over 3 years. I became a shell of who I was, completely numb, a walking zombie. I nearly died, overdosing 4 times. But somehow, I pulled myself out. In just 2 days, I'll be 5 months sober. I'm lucky. Really lucky. There was this gang of meth addicts in the next county over. Everyone knew who they were. Troublemakers who'd steal anything not nailed down. They were banned from grocery stores, bars, even pawn shops. Eventually, they got their hands on fentanyl, but had no idea how dangerous it actually was. 9 overdoses, 7 of them didn't survive, and that's not rare. These stories are happening more and more every single day. I'm alive because I had people around me who cared, people who gave me Narcan and saved my life. I don't take that for granted. I'm 49 years old now. That context matters. Back. When I was in college, a friend of mine started a company with one of our professors. This was in the early 90s, way before the internet became mainstream. The company was basically the first version of a social network. He offered me a job early on, employee number 4 or 5. But I didn't understand what the internet even was at the time. He couldn't offer much money either, so I passed. 3 years later, the company sold for $190 million, still only a handful of employees, and each of them had equity. Every single one of them became a millionaire by age 25, including several of my friends. Meanwhile, I was working an entry-level job at an insurance firm. A lot of those people have gone on to thrive in tech and private equity. They were basically set for life because of one choice they made in their early 20s. I've had a good life, a successful career. I didn't mess everything up, but I do think about that decision often. For every one person who makes it big, there are 10 others who crash and burn. I grew up in a financially secure household. One thing my dad always said was that he probably could have made a lot more money, but he was terrified of risking everything and putting our family in danger, so he played it safe. Looking back, maybe I did too, and maybe that was okay. Not long after high school, I started seeing posts all over social media saying my ex had died in a car accident. I'd already lost my sister in a crash 2 years earlier, so this hit hard, really. Hard. Even though we weren't together anymore, I still cared. Later, I found out what actually happened. He'd been out late with some friends, probably drinking. They thought it'd be funny to have him ride on top of a moving car. No seatbelt, no safety, no headlights, just speeding down a dark country road. He flew off and died. His body crashed through the windshield of another car, scaring the hell out of the kids in the back seat. To them, he literally appeared out of the darkness. And then there's the story of Henry Ruggs, a first-round NFL wide receiver, one of the best athletes in the world. He had everything: fame, money, and a future that most people only dream of. But one night he got drunk and got behind the wheel of his brand new Corvette. He crashed into a woman waiting at a stoplight with her dog in the car. The vehicle burst into flames. Both of them, woman and dog, burned to death. That one moment of poor judgment ended her life, ended his freedom, and destroyed everything he'd built. The craziest part? The NFL provides free rides for players specifically to avoid this, and even if they didn't, he was a millionaire. An Uber costs next to nothing. He had no excuse. That crash happened right at the entrance of the neighborhood. I was living in at the time. I remember heading to work around 6 a.m., seeing the police tape everywhere. Someone later vandalized the memorial people had set up. Eventually, a mural went up in its place. I'll never understand drinking and driving. Even at the lowest point in my alcoholism, I knew better. I stayed home. I drank alone. But that guy, his recklessness cost a woman and her dog their lives and turned his own into a cautionary tale. With the demon core and a screwdriver, just one small slip caused a flash of blue light, and suddenly his body was severely damaged. Within 9 days, he died from radiation poisoning. Given that Harry Daghlian had died 8 months earlier from the same plutonium core, you would expect Louises Slowden to have taken every possible precaution to avoid repeating such a tragic accident that claimed his colleague's life in such a terrible way. I knew a girl who made the poor decision to steal a large amount of cocaine from someone she was partying with, then tried to board a flight with it. Customs caught her, and she ended up serving time in prison. Roseanne Barr posted a racist tweet about a member of Obama's staff or cabinet. That single tweet cost her the show. She was fired, her character was written off, and the show was renamed. If I remember correctly, she'd been sharing a lot of QAnon-related content as well. Even if it hadn't been that one tweet, she likely would have been fired eventually. In my area, a well-known chiropractor took his family out on a boat on the Columbia River. He decided to dive off the boat and broke his neck on a sandbar, which left him paralyzed for life. The Columbia River is notorious for dangerous, shallow areas. This shocked the community, especially since he worked in spine care. I don't consider chiropractors to be real spine care providers. They frequently injure or even kill patients despite having no formal medical qualifications. Scientific studies indicate chiropractic treatment is only slightly better than doing nothing for stiff backs, assuming there is no serious injury. The best course is usually to wait for natural recovery. A local skateboarder I know tried a trick and broke his neck. He didn't realize it was broken and thought it was just stiff, so he visited a chiropractor. The chiropractor adjusted him without performing any x-rays and actually worsened his injury. Now he suffers from severe nerve pain, has huge medical debt, and can't move as he used to. He used to teach a skateboarding summer camp, but that is now over. His life has been seriously affected because he thought he only had a minor neck issue. When I was a teenager, I took a bad batch of ecstasy that damaged my heart. It continues to cause systemic problems with my circulation, but doctors have been unable to diagnose the exact cause. I've been disabled since age 18 and honestly doubt I will live to 40. As a child, we played hide and seek near the train tracks running through our neighborhood. Tragically, one boy hid behind a passing train, and a ladder attached to the train fatally injured him by decapitating him. His mother witnessed the whole event. Our parents rushed us inside as quickly as possible. It was a devastating experience. His life ended because of a game. If anyone needs it, I can probably find the news article about it. This happened in Barhaven, a suburb of Ottawa, in the summer of 1993. I lived just a few houses away and was at home when it occurred. It was horrible. If I recall correctly, his mother was a nurse and immediately rushed to help. He lived right across the street from my front door. It was a very sad event, though not as tragic as some others. Currently, my life has become complicated because my father-in-law moved in with us from out of state. He wanted to reconnect with my husband and made many promises before moving in. We had to buy a bigger house, which we cannot afford on our own. He helps pay the mortgage, but we discovered he is a compulsive hoarder. The house is overwhelmed by his junk. He is difficult to live with. He does not clean up, is often intoxicated, and has frequent accidents. We cannot force him to leave, because that would financially ruin us. At the same time, living with him is unbearable. It has become a nightmare, and we feel trapped. But you are not trapped. I have lived with a toxic relative before. You have to be practical. Treat the situation like a divorce. Sell the house. Give him his share of the profit if his name is on the deed, or give him what your husband feels is fair if not, and then move on with your lives. When I was a child, there was a family down the street with 3 young children. The parents had a bitter breakup, and the mother left with her new boyfriend. Every time she dropped off the kids for visitation, the exchange would escalate into a loud argument in the front yard. One day, she arrived with her boyfriend, and a fight broke out between him and the father. The boyfriend ended up punching the father and knocking him out on the lawn. After the boyfriend and mother jumped into their car and drove off, the father quickly got into his pickup truck and sped out of the driveway in pursuit. It's unclear what he intended to do, but he was determined not to let them get away. Unfortunately, he did not realize that his 3 young children were standing behind the truck when he shifted into reverse and accelerated. Tragically, all 3 children were killed. Witnesses described the scene as horrifying, especially since 2 of the children were caught under the spinning tires. The father spent 10 years in prison and lost everything. What made this story even more heartbreaking was that many accounts described him as a good father who was not responsible for the breakup. The mother had developed a drug addiction while trying to lose weight, and her boyfriend was also her drug dealer. The boyfriend was considered a good person caught in a difficult situation who then made one terrible mistake. When I first read this, I was confused about whether the mother had dropped off the children or taken them along. It was hard to believe a father would leave his children alone like that. As a parent myself, the horror of that situation hit me deeply. It made me wonder why the children weren't his top priority. Pride aside, he was clearly not thinking about their safety. I was too young at the time to understand all the legal details, but this is likely why he was charged, rather than the deaths being ruled. A tragic accident. If the truck had somehow missed the children, he would still have been guilty of abandoning 3 young kids, aged between 2 and 6, in his driveway while chasing after the car. In the heat of the moment, he forgot to care for his children, which turned a tragic accident into a criminal act. I believe the father is responsible for the deaths as he killed his own children in a fit of rage. Suggesting blame toward the mother in this case is unfair. The mother had her own serious issues, but the children's deaths were not her fault. The father didn't contest the charges and pled guilty to manslaughter, receiving the maximum 10-year sentence allowed by our state law. Many people were upset by his plea, arguing that he might have been confused and disoriented after being knocked unconscious just before the accident and might not have fully understood what he was doing. Despite that, the fact remains that he was effectively finished with his life after the incident. The violent, screaming matches between the parents happened every time the mother dropped off the children. The father's willingness to leave his kids alone just to chase after the car for his own pride shows he was never a good parent. If a mother had done something similar in response to a partner's infidelity, public opinion would be harsh, and she would be seen as a bad parent. Did not include all the details before to avoid overwhelming with text, but the entire neighborhood knew the reasons behind their arguments. The mother was addicted to methamphetamine and often showed up high to drop off the children. The father documented this neglect by taking photos and calling the police every time. The mother would sometimes leave the children hungry or with a toddler covered in dirt. She also had a dangerous habit of transporting the kids in the boyfriend's car without car seats, which the father reported repeatedly. The mother's drug use led to unpredictable behavior, including screaming at the father in the front yard in the middle of the night. She was clearly a problematic figure in this story and not a victim of society's double standards. On the day the children died, the mother again arrived without proper car seats. The father informed her he would call the police, which enraged the boyfriend driving that day. Everyone nearby knew about these ongoing conflicts. The father was so familiar to the police because of frequent visits that they almost knew him by name.